All right, I'm so excited. That was so great. It's been so good so far. Excited to hear what everybody's saying, but I'm going to dive in. So we are an online generation. We now shop online. We get all of our groceries online. You no longer have to go to the grocery store. You can pick everything, get it there. We date online, which is really weird. I know many of you are in that bucket. We don't even have the ability to ask somebody on a date anymore. We now just swipe right or left, and then we figure out if we like them or not. We have become our own versions of FBI agents because of the online world. You can meet somebody and find out their entire history in a matter of 5 minutes. Who they've dated, where they worked, what's their credit score like. Okay, am I gonna actually hang out with them yet? It's crazy. But the thing that I have found the most about my generation and the generation before is that we now find all our news and all our truth online. Every bit of information. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch NBC. I don't watch ABC or what's that, Good Morning America? I don't even know who's on it anymore. I know that Regis and Kathleen Lee, I don't even think it's them anymore. I don't know who it is because my news now comes from a cell phone and me scrolling through my feed. What I have found about my generation is that they are desperate and hungry for truth. They think that they're finding truth online through these avenues, but really they're hungry for some real truth. Truth that will sustain us through a season of life, not something we Google that validates a bias that we feel in a moment, right? Truth that actually carries us to the longevity of what we need to do and are called to do, not a truth that makes us feel good or feel like we're validated for what we feel in our emotions. The world is wrestling with questions and things that are facing us on a daily basis that are in our face. These are real questions from real people that I have the opportunity to lead and interact with. It's questions like, what does the church think about all of the killings that are happening to Black and white women by police officers? Do they not know that I'm Black and it could be me next? What does the church think about my same-sex attraction? I'm not acting upon it, but I feel it, and I don't even know who to talk to about it. But if I talk to someone, will I be rejected from the church? Is there a space for me as a female in this church? Because I don't see it, but there are spaces outside of the church, so maybe I'm gonna leave the church and find somewhere else to serve. And lastly, a personal one for me is, how does the church feel about ICE and hundreds of families being separated, living at the border, being displaced because of policies that are in place? How does the church feel about that? What's their response? I have no idea, but these people are my family. These are real issues that our world is facing on a daily basis. And the reality is that our culture and our world has created safe places for our generation and Gen Z to belong, to find answers to the questions that are plaguing the people in our world. But they're not actually safe places. They're not rooted in truth. They're not rooted in scripture. There's nothing about these places that are actually going to sustain them and help them understand what really God's heart and character is in that. So what I found is that, if I'm honest, I feel like we live in a world where the world has a lot to say about these things, but the church has very little to say about these things, and we remain silent. We remain silent. And as I've realized that as I scroll through my feed, seeing news about what's going on in my world, I pass a pastor giving a message that's fluffy about fulfilling your destiny and living your best life, but not talking about the truth in scripture or what I need to hear to fill my life. Right? Like that's what I see on a daily basis. And on the other side of that screen, people are seeing these messages and news next to it, and they're living in fear of their actual lives, fear of saying something that might be misunderstood, fear to communicate how they really are feeling, fear. It's plaguing them. And our culture, unfortunately, as we all know all too well, paints the church today as homophobic, male-driven, white privileged, that believes in everything our president says and tweets. That's what the world says the church is like. And to be honest, it's heartbreaking. I say that in love because I love the church. I believe in the church. I am passionate about the church. But I feel as a church as whole, we are not too far off from the people that are living in fear. The American church lives in a different kind of fear. It's called fear of man. We're afraid to offend somebody, so we don't say anything. We're afraid to step on toes. We're afraid that if we say something, we're going to say the wrong thing. We're afraid that if we speak out, we're going to be misunderstood. We're afraid that if we have a position on something, it's going to come across a certain way, and now people are going to leave our church, and we're going to be left on our own. We're so afraid. And I feel like neither is working out for us right now. And as hard as it is to address this topic, I know I've been a little doom and gloom, and this is heavy, and I'm going in hard, and we're 3 minutes in, and I've just given you all of this. But I have to say that it has to be said, because there is a reality that our culture in our world is being infiltrated with information and news and things, and they're finding places outside of the church, when I believe the true safe place and the place where they can be healed and find comfort and find answers and find what the Father's heart is on these issues, and the response is actually in your churches, in your small groups, in the pews that you set up, whether it's in a junior high you're setting up and tearing down every week. I know many of you on the other side of the screen have committed to a life to follow Jesus, and that's a sacrifice that is huge, but you've committed on a higher level. You're going to steward and shepherd people for the rest of your life, and you're going to stay in that. And so as we do that, how do we become the source of truth, the ultimate source of truth, not just an add-on and an addition that doesn't address these issues? And so I realized as I was preparing this and praying through this and being like, God, really, I'm going to talk about this. The Lord kept bringing me back to the Gospels. And what was amazing is that the time that we live in, the culture that we live in, the truth being spoken is not popular. It's becoming increasingly less popular to follow Jesus today than it was 10 years ago. I think with every passing day, it becomes less popular. It's not popular to be a pastor today. You guys know that. So what I've realized is that there was someone who lived in his time, and he was also not popular for what he said. His name's Jesus. Always the great answer, as we're taught, right? The Sunday school answer. But what I saw in the life of Jesus as I've been reading through the Gospels is that Jesus, every time he said or did something, never once have I read through the Gospels and heard everybody's response be, we agree, we love that, Jesus, or we don't need an explanation on that one. We got it. So it's all good. We don't need you to unpack any of that. Every time Jesus spoke something, whether it was a parable or a message, there needed to be further explanation to be unpacked into what he meant. When he healed somebody, there were multiple times when the disciples were like, we don't have time for this. We can't do this. This is not on our agenda. Guess what Jesus did? He went out of his way and still made time for those people and healed them. He met the woman at the well. He approached her and talked to her when he wasn't supposed to. We have haters and trolls. Jesus had Pharisees and Sadducees, okay? Nothing has really changed. And what the Lord really spoke to me and wanted me to share with you today as you are listening and watching this was that we can look through the Gospels and actually find a lot of comfort in the life of Jesus. Because we live in a day and age where if you do anything, it feels like everybody's watching. It feels like everyone has something to say. So as a pastor, to say something on these very heavy topics and begin to dive into them with your church and to talk about them, it feels almost terrifying that someone's going to say something negative and bash you or do something against you. But Jesus lived that life himself, and it didn't stop him from proclaiming truth. It didn't stop him from continuing to loving the lost. It didn't stop him from making time for people that were marginalized. And I believe that if we take the time to do those same things, to speak up about these issues when it's not popular, to invite tax collectors and sinners into our homes to sit with us and to break bread with them and to hear what's going on in their lives, those tax collectors and sinners for you may be Black people in your church who are feeling real fear from what's going on in our world, and sitting with them and listening to them and hearing their heart. And it may be on a Sunday morning not knowing what to say, but coming on a stage and saying, hey, I know there have been X amount of school shootings in our country, and I know it's a heavy thing. I don't know what to say, but I'm with you. I'm for you. I feel your pain, and I want us to press into it together. It is that simple, to provide a safe place for people to belong and to come hear truth, to not be fed truth by the world, but to be fed truth by the ultimate truth. And we have that responsibility, and it's beautiful. And so I have to say that, of course, the future of the church, who knows what it is, but I think the church right now needs you as pastors to step up to the plate, to own just the reality that we live in a hard time. There are difficult things going on, but to create a safe place for truth to be spoken and unpacked so our generation can find a sustainable truth to sustain us for the rest of our lives.